Also, maybe there's some people who are interested, as you mentioned from the last class, at least in Pakistan, you feel that the Sunni Shia divide is recent, or it's not there, or it's overstated, or you said people go to in the countryside, Shia and Sunni go to wedding funerals, they go to the same mosque. That's all we read about in the West, is this tremendous divide between Sunni and Shia. Can you just comment a little bit? I'm sorry to put you.
Well, I think it's at two levels.
Okay.
One is at the grassroots level.
Yes.
The other is at the global level. Both need a separate examination.
All right.
But I can talk about the grassroots level because this is grassroots class. We of course have about 20% Shias in Pakistan, and Sunnis are more. But this is just it's not a sectarian, because when we say sectarian, it means some problem. But it's I'm Shia, and my friend may be a Sunni, but that doesn't matter. We are neighbors. At the grassroots level, if we have a non-functional school, it is affecting both Shias and Sunnis. If a hospital is not working in that area, it's a common problem. So all Shias and Sunnis or Christians living in as a community, they are facing similar problems. So in many villages, many villages, Sunnis and Shias go to same mosque. They share. Maybe a landlord is a Shia and the peasant or his worker is a farm laborer is not Shia, and vice versa. So we never had this problem before. And also, if you look at the global level, if you take up the literature about, I don't call it Islamic societies, I call it Muslim societies, which are completely non-Islamic. So the Islamicists are trying to translate Muslim societies into Islamic societies. And we are resisting because our cultures are different. But anyway, coming back to this, because if you go back to pre-1980 literature, you would hardly find any debate about Shia-Sunni conflict even in Western books or written by Western scholars. Because after the Iranian Revolution, this divide, so-called divide between Shias and Sunnis are being magnified. Because Khomeini was anti-America, but also he was anti-Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia happened to be Sunni. So since then, this is being reconstructed. The Shia-Sunni divide is being reconstructed and portrayed in such a way that this conflict has been there for centuries. This is not true, because in the early Abbasid period, who ruled about for 500 years, most of the bureaucracy, the high bureaucracy of Sunni Khalifa would come from Iran, and that was Shia. So most officials, very influential officials in the early Islamic period were Shias, while the Khalifas were Sunnis. So this conflict was never there. Even if you pick up old books printed before 1980, you would hardly find this kind of reconstruction or a construction. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that this is being overplayed overly magnified and manipulated. Yeah.
Hello everyone here.
Switch off some lights.
I'm stranger to everything
Sure.
here.
Bas, that's
So, as Paul mentioned, my name is Alyia Bano and I have come from Pakistan. And we'll tell you what brings us here from Pakistan to Japan and then from Sendai to Kyoto. But before that, I would like to introduce myself briefly. Well, at the moment, I'm working as an independent consultant, and the consultancy that I'm doing is mostly political on the human rights issues, where I work with parliamentarian on policy making. But before that, I started working in the development sector from a very grassroots level. And one of your peers asked me earlier, so what bring me into a development sector and what was my career, what was I doing before? I started my career as a teacher, teaching in a private school where I was a Montessori teacher. In Pakistan, unfortunately, we have a very poor state schools education system. So most of the children, the privileged children, they can go to a private school, which are quite good. And I was one teacher in one of those schools. I taught there for 7 years. But at the end of the day, I found out that I was only teaching few very privileged class. And in past, I always thought of working with people as a grassroots. I was also middle class or middle class family from very urban area. I read about human rights and poverty and deprivation. But I always wanted to work those people, but couldn't be in contact with them in the rural area. So I thought teaching is a very noble job. I could be in touch with children, with other people. But teaching in that private school didn't satisfy me. So I later joined one of the NGOs, which is run by Bari, Public Development Organization, and they were really working into grassroots level. So I found it changed my personality, my perception, my learning of life. So whatever I'm doing at the moment, I still believe that most of my learning has come from the grassroots level, because until unless you're in touch with them, you sit with them, you work with them, you spend time with them, you will never know about the real problems. You could read a book, 100 billion of books, you could read about human rights, deprivation, problems, this and that. But if you're not really working with them, you can't even imagine what those are, how vulnerable people are, how they are resilient, how they are living in those environments, how would they like to change their lives, and what ways, and this and that. So our change could always start with working with people. So at the moment, I think I'm very lucky to have this opportunity in life. This is a very informal session, so it's not a lecture, and I'm not a lecturer, so it's just the reflection of what I've done and then I would like you to reflect on that as well. So what brings us here? In fact, there is a world conference. Last week there was a world conference last week in Sendai, and this world conference was on disaster risk reduction. DRR, you would be familiar with the word DRR. So we've been working in the development sector as a part of the civil society, because Patan worked with since 1992 with the disaster relief, and gradually they moved into a disaster risk reduction. So we were a part of one of the Asian disaster risk reduction network. So that's how we came to Japan or to attend that conference. And then Paul is a very good friend of Bari, and he invited us to Kyoto. And in a way, we came to see you as well. So I will just tell you a little bit about this conference and what have we contributed into that conference. So before coming to that conference, we were being given, all of the organization, those who were part of that network, were given a kind of task to have road from Sendai to bring the messages from the community for the World Conference. So we did an activity. What we have done is that, anyway, before telling to that activity, I'll tell you one very important thing, that as most of the developing countries around the world where the governance is poor, and in Pakistan too, people are not concerned, they're not concerned about neither informed, not concerned, not being involved in the decision made for them. So this is where the role of civil society starts, because we inform people about make them aware about the rules and rights. so they can influence the decision making government, they can make the governments accountable. So this is what Patan was doing for last so many years. We had an awareness campaigns about human rights, women's rights, about labor rights, especially about the minimum wage. Barry will tell you more on that. And this campaign about telling them about DRR and about the World Conference was also part of those ongoing campaigns. So we had this campaign in 55 locations. We call it breaking the silence. So making people aware about what there was a World Conference going on and what is the DRR. So this campaign, Road to and from Sendai campaign, was being done on the donkey carts. We'll show you the pictures on the donkey carts were decorated with the pamphlets where the brochure was printed about Road to Sendai, and those donkey carts were sent to 55 flood affected areas along with the staff member, where staff member was telling them about the World Conference and asking them what messages would they like to give to the government of Pakistan, to the world leader in the Sendai about the DRR. And then more than 1,500 men and women wrote those messages at the local level in their own language, in their own context. It was not very like a technical messages or this, but in their own context, how were they thinking they were vulnerable to this disaster. And then there was a van decorated with all those pamphlets, and those were sent to the NGO offices and to the press club, where 110 reporters and NGO workers inserted their messages. Then later we also have a national level conference in Islamabad. We invited a different organization to participate, and we just talk about the policies on DRR, the state of DRR in Pakistan, and what messages, what do they think, why is this system so weak here, and what message would they like to give. So I'll show you the pictures. So these were the donkey carts, those who were decorated. It's written in Urdu, in the language, about the road to Sendai, and the staff members sitting there, they're announcing that there's a world conference happening in Sendai in Japan, and what message would you like to give. So you could see one of the students writing a message on the pamphlets. We also have a female staff who went along on the donkey cart to the rural communities. Then there were women writing their messages in Urdu, in local languages. There's another student also writing a message. The press club, and then there's a staff, there's someone with special need is writing a message. So this is how we received around 2,000 messages from men and women.
Sendai has become a very popular name.
So Japan, Sendai, everybody knows Sendai. The communities where they ask where it is, why it's happening in Japan, this World Conference. So there are women again writing, children and women writing about it. Or then they have these special messages on the piece of paper.
Tarjuma kar do. Piche.
How to reduce the risk from disaster, and what messages would you like to give to your government? So that was a caption on the top.
उसको पढ़ दो ना.
Okay, one of the very pertinent message that came out was this one. One of the local person, he wrote that end our poverty, and we will fight with our own, on our own with the disasters. So poverty elimination came as one of the more pertinent message. People think if they eliminate, the governments could eliminate the poverty, that they are able to fight with the disasters. Well, then we had this roundtable conference. So I will tell you the crux of the messages that came out of these 2,000 messages. People think that poverty is one of the reasons, that that there is one of their biggest vulnerability. They're not able to fight with the disasters. Another thing that came out was the poor governance. People think that due to poor governance, it's making them more vulnerable to the disasters. So when they say poor governance, they mean that there are policies in Pakistan, there are plans in Pakistan, but they are not implemented. So that's a part of a poor governance. And then again, there are kind of an infrastructure in Pakistan, like the way the bridges are being made, or the way these embankments are being made, or they are making them more vulnerable to disaster rather than reducing it. For example, there was one of the bridge, like the width of the river is around 11 kilometers, but the bridge was constructed few years before because only 1 kilometer long. So in a way, you are making the water being gathered on one part, so making people more vulnerable. So people, local people have their own wisdom, so they understand all these issues. They have been living in those communities for years and years. They understand it. So they think that the poor governance is one of the main reasons that is increasing their vulnerabilities. So another thing that came out was the feudal system. Most of the people wrote, and the feudal system. A feudal system was one of their vulnerability because they think during these areas was usually a flood-affected area, flood-prone area. So they think that the feudal lots, owning lots of their land, they have crops. So when flood comes, to save their crops, they breach the embankment in a way the water comes to the community where people are living to save their own crops. So they are creating a disaster. So they think the end of feudal system that can also make their vulnerabilities less. And then another message that came out was about vulnerabilities. About feudal system.
Local government.
Local government, yes. People want the local government. There should be a local government system because with the local government system, that could be only the way that they could easily be a part of the decision making. But for last 8 years in Pakistan, we didn't have any local government election, although our constitution says that there should be a 3 level of government, a national, a provincial, and then a local government. But for last 8 years, none of the democratic government has held local government election because through the local government election, people could be a part of, they have their elected representatives and they could be a part of decision making. So we have one of the disaster policy and plan which says that there should be a district level disaster risk management authorities at the district level, and that the local elected member will be chairing those authorities. But unfortunately, we didn't have any local government election for last 8 years, so there is no those district authorities at those levels. So that's why people think there should be a local government election. And then during the conference which we held at the national level, where 35 organizations took part, so we had a discussion of their representation. So the poor governance also came out to be one of the main reasons that is the DRR. So you see what was said at the grassroots level, there was also unanimity, what people said at the national level. So they think that poor governance is one of the reasons that people vulnerabilities are increasing, and that we cannot increase the resilience. They could not become resilient to the disasters. So this was activity, so we brought in the message to Sendai. And in Sendai was a big conference. There were UN agencies, there were head of the states, and head of the states were negotiating on the coming funding to the developing countries, developed countries giving funding to the developing countries. So one of the indicators the developed country gave was the good governance to the developing countries. That until and unless they will not improve their governance, they're not going to fund them for DRR. So what was people saying came from the grassroots level to the Sendai as well. So that was a little brief introduction that why we came here. So any questions so far in your mind? Just feel free to ask any questions. Because I have no clue about your course, what course you are doing. But you can ask anything.
Oh, I think they have no clue about it.
So it's the same rule, so just ask so we could be knowing each other.
So in Pakistan, it was to do grassroots mobilization people wanted to have a voice at that level?
Well, yes, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, because Pakistan, the literacy rate is very low,
Mhm.
and people are not aware about their, as I said earlier, about their rights, about what are the policies and how, what government has done with those national level policies, international commitments. So there is no awareness at the grassroots level at all. So there is a role of civil society, and even the local communities are not aware about the technical things. So we civil society, we mobilize them, we tell them about all the policies, about the laws, and then we ask them, we mobilize them to make their governments accountable.
Mhm.
And they really, because with that knowledge, with that information, they can form their groups. They can form a small movement. There are movements we have already started with the labor, people working at bricklaying labor for the minimum wage. Government has certain minimum wage at the government level, but most of those owners of the bricklaying, they were not giving them. They were paying them very, very low. And the people working, labor working, they were not even aware of that minimum wage which government has set for them. There was no awareness about that. Either government has set some standard of minimum wage. So by giving this awareness, it makes them feel that this is their right, they should be getting it. So they really mobilize with confidence. They have sit-ins for 3, 4 days, and the other groups, those who were industrialists, they pressurize them, they threaten them as well. But in end of the days, where we were really working, there were movements there, we were mobilizing them. Those districts were able to get that minimum wage, whereas now rest of the other districts are also contacting. So there is a kind of urge for people. They wanted to be mobilized. They wanted to get the information, awareness about the rights, about the laws, about the technical things, because that helps them to form their movement and to raise their voices. Anything you would like to add into?
You know, literature on,
What arguments are you hearing against grassroots mobilization?
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, that's
Sorry?
interesting. Yeah.
Yes, I think Bari can hear.
What is the question?
Well, of course, what argument are you hearing against this grassroots mobilization? Against the grassroots mobilization?
Well, I heard this question first time.
Well, that's very interesting and it flew towards you.
Yeah, who's working against you? Oh.
Well, people who don't want to see any change, people who are benefiting from so-called stability, people who are rich, people who propagate the development is very important. And if you would have a strong labor movement, the industrialists and investors would go away. So all this kind of argument comes from people, but we have to see that if there is a law as well. The law is that there are human rights, there are labor laws. So this is part of our constitution, and you can't violate the constitution. So it's a development and democracy. We were discussing in the last seminar as well. It's like egg and chicken debate.
Yeah.
What should come first? I think chicken was first. So so I think it's important because we don't say that we need revolution. We say what is written in our statute book. Either you remove it or you implement it. It's very simple.
And it should be
All citizens are equal under Pakistani constitution. So we should find out why some people are equal and others are not. If our law says that the minimum wage rate is like $2 a day, then it must be paid or change the law. So we as a strategy, we don't demand anything new because there's a huge gap between public policy, constitution, and implementation. So we are trying to demand that this gap between public policy, law, and implementation should be bridged. And we are not saying do it overnight, but at least you must give us the roadmap.
And you're not saying to do it violently either.
Not at all.
That's right, I
Yeah.
know. So it's not-
We, if we found somebody who's violent, we kick him out from the movement. Because non-violence is our strength.
See, it's really interesting for this class that Alyia and Bano are talking about feudal society, and here we're in Japan. And although I'm not a Marxist, but left-wing academics in Japan, and we've talked about this, we talk about Japan never having a revolution from below, and there are still feudal remnants in Japan, especially women not demanding their rights, not strong movements for protection of workers. The video that I showed you last class, someone working 200 extra hours a month and without getting paid. And why isn't this person going to why doesn't he protest? Why doesn't he go to a lawyer? Why doesn't he, how could he be treated this way? So these behaviors, even in advanced industrialized societies, compared to Pakistan, is that there's a need for civil society and grassroots mobilization. Not just especially in Pakistan and Japan, but everywhere. It's the grassroots level. I have one more question. Does other people?
I just want to add one
Yeah,
thing,
please.
that our strategy about mobilization is based on giving people at the grassroots about the awareness about the policies and their rights. So it always becomes much easier because they're not saying that something new, which is already there. So it's very difficult for people to criticize it as time, even the district government, the feudals, or whoever, mullahs, clergies, ever. So we are just telling them what is there already for them. The government has decided, or the state has decided for them. So our mobilization is usually based on that.
But just adding to that, it's
Yes.
unlike traditional trade union movements, because they negotiate with the factory owner. We don't. We ask the government. Because this is the law, so you are responsible to implement. We don't go to landlords. We don't go to factory owners. We don't negotiate with them. We don't shout at them. We say that the state is responsible because we have a social contract with the state. We pay taxes. You pass laws, so you are the custodian of our rights under the law. So we don't confront directly with powerful, but the state, because we own our state as well. So we as a citizen part of the state. So our target is state officials.
You say
And
we own the state. Is that what you
We are part of the state.
Yes.
Yeah, as citizens. Yeah.
I wonder if Japanese in this class have the same idea that we own the state, we are the state. We
Yeah.
pay the civil servants, they work for us, they're civil servants. Who do they serve? They serve us. Those are interesting things for any society to enshrine, to remember.
Mm.
Or what perception do you have for Pakistan,
Ah.
people living at the grassroots level? How do you perceive them, like men, women, children, young people?
I think the problem is that a lot of us aren't given much of a perception, which is the problem. Like for a lot of our countries, we have to go out of our way to actually find out about this type of thing. I think there definitely needs to be more information put out about this type of thing because I don't know. So, like, I think that's one of the huge problems that's going on right now. There's not enough information being spread around, and the information that is being spread around is the wrong kind of information.
Absolutely.
So.
I had a discussion with somebody in Sendai
Uh-huh.
because America, he was head of disaster unit of USAID,
All right.
and we were discussing Katrina cyclone or hurricane. And he said for 2 years nothing was done. People were still displaced. I said, why then you were sending money to us? Our flood effect is. You should have spent that money on your own people instead of sending to Pakistan. He didn't have any answer. Because it's very important for the citizens of developed world, including Japan and America and Britain, that how taxpayers' money is being used in the developing countries. Because citizens of America or Britain, they don't ask their governments that our taxpayers' money was wasted or properly used. I took a team of UK aid. They came to interview me, and I said, look, I can give you my opinion, but I would like you to take to the grassroots. So I took them to a village, and this old man asked them, of course in his language, he could not speak English. He said, why are they so worried about our poverty? While our own government is least interested about our poverty. So I translated this question, and this consultant said, I don't have any answer. I am a just consultant.
When you write grassroots level, reality was very different from the perception we had through both media.
Would you think people in Pakistan who live in the cities also are disconnected from the
Yes.
from the rural area
But
as well?
yes, obviously, I think so, because they are being also depending upon the media about the perception. We even living in an urban area hardly go to the rural areas. We just perceive and then we make our decisions based on that. Or the people living in rural areas are very conservative, they are extremists and this and that.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
As you guys had mentioned, instead of like directly confronting like industrialists, you go to the state and you kind of petition them to help you out. Have you ever had any pushback or any hesitation from the state to enforce the laws that they've made, like let's say minimum wage? And if so, how would you kind of pressure them to enforce the laws?
Well, of course, in the beginning, there's a lot of resistance. There are a lot of excuses, and they use all kinds of excuses to delay implementation. But you need to be persistent. We start with like a letter or individual meeting, then gradually building up pressure, like going to the press, then having like 200 people outside his office. If still things doesn't move, then next time 1,000 people coming for 2 hours, next time coming for the whole day. So gradually building up the pressure. So it works at the end of the day, because they are violating the law. So you then target a certain official who is resistant, and it moves, it improves. But of course, it's not easy. Yeah.
It is like fighting with
Sometime if results are not coming, then people also get tired, and they would disappear. They think that they are wasting time, they are wasting their resources, nothing is going to change. So they go back to this stability mode. Whatever we have, that's enough. So this hope in change must be inculcated, and for that you have to have some success. And we, especially at the grassroots level, never go for big success. Go for smaller successes, but not one after the other. So then they can see that with the movement, things would change, though little, but not, and that creates hope. That spreads like a virus in other areas as well. Like this, our movement for minimum wages is spreading now to a lot of districts. People are approaching us. So we are telling them, you hold your own demo or rally, and then we would come. You have to establish your seriousness. So you must hold a demo in your own city, in front of the officials. And once you do that, then we would come. Because sometimes there are agents of the state as well, who would provoke you unnecessarily.
So one of the reasons is that because why there is a resistance between the state and official giving what we have already decided for them. Because in our parliament we have most of them are industrialists and feudals, those who have a direct interest. Like in fact in a mill where there is minimum wage is not given, it could be owned by one of the MPs sitting in the parliament. So you see there is a conflict of interest there. All those feudals will never give the minimum wage at the peasants working on their farm. So the policy makers are in fact the one who are barrier. So what we have asked now that this, like we have this movement for minimum wage, that districts or those few areas might get their minimum wage, but then and then the movement will be finished. Now we are asking them to be a part, this movement to be a part of a political movement. We are converting them into a political party. We are politicizing them. So they have understood this. The reason is that until and unless they are not a part of politics, political activities, they have to form their own groups, they have to elect their own member who could sit in the parliament, and then he could safeguard their rights, they can make the policies that suits them. So the movements are, like, the movements will end, will finish while you get your objective from that movement. But all this effort now we are going to translate into political activities. So they should be politically active. There is a disconnect between political parties and all those people, this labor movement, movement of women and peasants. So we are more criticizing them coming to the political process.
Yeah, people talk a lot about ownership and agency. So it's they own it. It's not the NGO that owns it. So I think the good NGOs have to really step back from to make sure that it's owned by the right people. So there's some writers talk about the more civil society, the better, but I would most likely think that there's also bad civil society as well. And people don't like to, NGOs don't like to talk about bad civil society, but there's bad civil society as well. Not from my friend, not from Patan, but yeah, there's bad civil society as well, that do counterproductive things.
Yeah, a lot of them.
A lot of them, yeah. Civil societies or NGOs have their various capabilities, and of course they're all donor-driven, which is always a problem. Yeah, so they're project to project. It's like a construction company. Although they're building a building, if they don't have another contract, they'll be bankrupt. So they always are looking for funding, always. So the donors have, recently, I think money has been tight. Has it been tight in Pakistan?
Oh, there's a lot of money.
There's a lot of money,
Yeah.
for certain projects, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for certain projects.
Anybody from European Union here?
European Union people, yes. A couple of people. From Germany.
So many.
And from France? France?
You see, you may know that Pakistan has been given this facility, which is called GSP Plus. You know that?
No.
Should start a grassroots work here.
Well, you can come here and start with us. It's very easy for them to.
No, I just wanted to inform you. This is a great facility. It is being given to Bangladesh, Pakistan, Vietnam, and some other countries. We can export goods to European Union countries without taxes, without duties. So no duties on Pakistani goods. Exporting to European Union countries, 28 countries.
Don't use this no money.
It's an intervention, okay, this one.
So 28 countries, we can export our textile. No duties. So our goods are cheaper than other countries. We can compete China, we can compete Vietnam, we can compete other countries. So our goods are cheap. But with GSP plus, Pakistan foreign exchange earning has gone up by $1-2 billion in 1 year. But there is a condition: improve governance. Improve human rights in Pakistan. Now this gives us a great space.
Enforce all international.
So what happened? The European Union ambassador, along with ILO, International Labour Organization, they announced that they are going to have a labour conference in Lahore. Lahore is the capital of Punjab. So we announced that we would have a parallel labour conference. We went to a number of donors and we said we wanted to have a parallel labour conference. Every donor refused. They said, why you are having parallel? I said, because government is not going to do this. Government is controlled by big business. And the most corrupt government. So in Lahore, they started the labour conference in the 5-star hotel. We had an open labour conference. Open. And these people came from all over Punjab. 300 plus people turned up, 3 women and men. So for 3 days, they had a labour conference. Pakistan is a very hot country, 40 degrees. So we were sitting out for 3 days and nights. Every day, on the front page of every big newspaper in the newspaper, there would be official labour conference news, and parallel to that, our news. We spoiled the impact of European Union and government labour conference. And every evening they would come, the government ministers, please stop your give up. We will give you in writing. We said, no, this is not. You should announce inside the conference. If you are serious, you should just issue the order. We will go. So they finally issued a directive to all the districts that the minimum wage must be implemented. So one step forward, but for 3 days and nights, because the newspapers would give us good coverage. Every afternoon, I would write a press release and we would issue to all newspapers. And when Chief Minister went to inaugurate the conference, one journalist threw shoe at him. So after that, they realized that these people are serious. So this is grassroots. All those women and men who came to Lahore, these women made 100 bricks extra every day to finance her travel and food in Lahore. Every man made 200 extra bricks to finance his participation in the parallel labour conference. So our role is very limited. It's basically their own leader. Our role is just a catalyst. So it's very important that when you work at the grassroots level, you must not take the leadership. The leadership should be helped to emerge from the people. Now we have poets from the community, wonderful poets, singers, women singers. They are illiterate, but they are great poets. And they recite for 3 days and nights. They were singing and dancing Men were sitting, sleeping together on open space. So they were violating all mullahs' Islam. So, but the leadership is there. They don't need us. When they need us, they phone us. Come, and then we go. Otherwise, we leave it to them. So now that movement is spreading. They are becoming very important in their area. So now please don't touch them. And now it's spreading as well.
I don't
Next
know.
time Paul comes,
Yes,
I will take him.
we'll go.
But you are also welcome to come.
Yeah, and you're talking about people who make bricks?
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone in this class has ever seen people making bricks in a furnace, and it is the most awful work. And people are making, I can't even call it the minimum wage. They're making, it's dirty work, it's filthy, and I guess they get paid by how many bricks they make as well. So it's just the most exploitative work you could possibly imagine. And these people are mobilized. Yeah, 1,000 bricks. Yeah. These bricks have to be baked.
So for making 1,000 bricks, you earn 880 rupees.
Which is $8.8.
And it takes 3 days.
Of course, they have to be fired.
Yeah.
And taken out in the pool.
And at least 8 to 10 people are involved in making the
Yes.
1,000 bricks, so it's a whole family.
It's a family business.
It's women,
Yeah.
children, their men, everyone working to
Everyone.
make as quickly as possible the 1,000 bricks, so they can get $8.8.
And we would be driving to
Yeah.
Pakistan, and we would be seeing these furnaces working all the time.
All the time.
Day and night.
This is yours.
Actually, also, what is interesting about this is the whole debate about whether it's Africa or developing countries. What developing countries don't need is aid. What they need is trade. You know? I'm sorry. Yeah, and that's right. A lot of it has to do with tariffs and making trade numbers and income numbers go up. So it's the old story about giving a man a fish and teaching someone a fish. But it's really true. The aid is not has not been. I don't want to say hasn't been a complete failure, but people are rethinking aid. So the trade part is much better, as long as it's fair. Yeah, that's the point that you're making, is as long as it's fair, as long as it's, who benefits from these the new trade packages. So, that's where I think the European Council would have to look at these trade deals so that they're fair. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just adding to it, this is what one of the reasons of this GSP class, which is generalized scheme of preferences, so that it benefits not only the industrialists and the owners, but the benefits should go to the grassroots level, to the workers, with improving their working conditions, social security, their benefits on health and education.
Also women's rights.
And also the women's rights, and it also includes all the treaties, international treaties which government has ratified, like the ICCPR, CEDAW,
Yeah.
it also applies on that. Any other questions?
By the way, Prime Minister Abe was at this conference?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, he was there.
Yes, he
That's
was
Japan.
there in Sendai.
Yes.
It's in Sendai for a good reason.
Hmm.
Because it's near Fukushima. But
Ban Ki-moon was there.
who was it?
Ban Ki-moon?
was there?
Yeah.
Many head of the states were there.
Yeah, the food must have been good. So these people don't eat bad food. But Japan is important in this because it's most likely the second or third largest grantor of foreign direct assistance.
Yeah.
So Japan has deep pockets.
Hmm.
So which projects projects are they looking to and pledging? And to hold a conference like this means the Japanese government and Japanese people are spending their tax money. It's an expensive conference. I'm not asking if they pay for you to come, but they pay for some people to come. And it's a long conference. I was really surprised that it was
5 days, yeah.
which means you need at least 6 days in a 5 days in a hotel in Japan with meals. Someone's got to pay for this. It's very expensive. I could never run more than a 3-day conference for 10 people. It's a lot of money. Airfare, hotels, food. So Japan is committed to that.
Alyia paid her own fare.
Well, I paid my own
Yeah,
fare.
Yes.
I can have two parts.
Yes,
of
I
the
should.
question.
Please, I'm not asking.
And I paid for my own hotel as well.
Okay.
Kind of two parts to my question. The first one is Japan's giving foreign aid and like money and stuff to these countries, right? Is that what you're saying? So in that case, it is council, did you bring up this whole idea of opening up trade as opposed to giving foreign aid, or what exactly are you guys discussing at the conference?
Oh, well, this conference was focusing on disaster risk reduction,
Oh.
how to reduce making people living on the disaster prone area, how can you make them more resilient, how can you reduce the risk of disaster, how you can reduce their vulnerabilities, how you can increase their capacities. So this was more focusing on that.
Oh.
So it was not about trade.
Oh, okay, okay.
So it was more because Japan is also a very disaster prone area.
Okay.
So that's why it's happening in Sentai. But situation in the developing countries are very different from Japan. In Pakistan, around 36% of people live below poverty line. So there the vulnerabilities are very different, obviously. So even in Africa, in other South Asian countries, the situation and vulnerabilities are different, situations are different.
Yeah, and the costs are, the damage is calculated differently.
Damage is also calculated.
Because when a rich country has a disaster, it's the money, I mean, the loss is in tremendously high terms. But those terms, I think, have to be looked at, because people are just looking at the money terms. People are people, they get affected. Bangladesh has a flood, it always has a flood. It's cyclone, it's in the cyclone thing, but it's, the monetary value is low. The life loss is high.
I get the questions about communities in grassroots level.
Do you know of any fair trade industries in
There's hardly any.
There's hardly any because as I told you, the condition of people working labor is very bad, very terrible, although there are policies.
There's small interventions in fair trade, but very insignificant. Yeah.
We were talking about this because we had an absolutely amazing dinner. I didn't cook it, Buddy didn't cook it, but you cooked it. He didn't have to cook, by the way, but he volunteered. We did the dishes, by the way.
See, defending
About these absolutely delicious products that Pakistan also could export, besides mangoes and things, but absolutely rugs, textiles. So that trade, if it increased, could create jobs, with poverty alleviation as well. We got an export item. And that's hard too. You can't think of a product. In fact, maybe you people can, but it's hard to think of a product that Pakistan exports. Besides terrorism, of course. Yeah, so,
Textile.
textiles, yes,
Yeah,
of course.
Rice,
Yeah, but
basmati
that's
rice.
WTO, you know, we were in a village somewhere, I don't know where, somewhere in Pakistan, and this woman, it's a woman, I didn't say that in a negative way. I think she was a textile worker, I think she was illiterate, and she's at a grassroots meeting, and she starts talking about the World Trade Organization, how unfair it is. And I'm thinking, what do you know? She knew everything about how the World Trade Organization is impacting her life. With wages, and how the factory, yeah, so So, these things that seem to operate at this level, local people know what effect, sometimes know what's affected. That might have been in Faisalabad as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so very, so for fair trade, products.
I guess you wouldn't need fair trade if there's programs like this, if it's successful. But who knows how long it'll last.
People talk, they compare, it's human nature. They know when they're being paid, they know their treatment, I think. You find that's true, that people know that they should be treated better, that they're treated poorly?
Well, I think, yes.
Yeah.
Because this is human nature,
Yes.
everybody wants to be treated with dignity. You could be rich or poor, even if you are poor, but your dignity should be protected, you should be treated with dignity, that's everybody knows. And this is what dignity is being hurt in Pakistan with the poor, because there's nothing wrong with poor, because there couldn't be equality.
In Pakistan, there is a hierarchy of violating your dignity. Because our Prime Minister is humiliated by military general.
That's dignity.
And our military general's dignity is violated by CIA or Pentagon. So, women's dignity is violated by men. So there is a hierarchy, and we need to eliminate it. But first we have to inform people that it's everywhere, and some people are humiliated more frequently than others.
And the Arab Spring comes out of humiliation,
Yeah.
in part. Just to think people would be passive, which is what most academics felt there'd never be an Arab Spring, because the Islamic communities are passive. Well, of course, they're angry, and they know it.
It's in the environment, there's a time it's being gradually being building up that anger, and then there is a time it bursts.
See what
There's
you-
always that anger.
But, yeah, for the people doing, in this class that are doing projects, it's interesting if you could see angry Japanese. It's hard for me to find anger in Japan at the grassroots level. Concern, yes, but I don't see people, if you can find it, let me know. Who, like, what's that? Yeah, the right winger. Yeah, they're always in a bad mood. And yeah, maybe extremists at both sides are angry, but you don't find, you can find extremists in Japan as well. Yeah, it's interesting.
Do you think gender equality is changing in Pakistan?
Sorry?
Gender equality is changing?
Oh, yes, that's very interesting. Gender equality, there are movements going on, there is an anger on that as well. And to some extent, yes, it is changing in the urban area. When women are more coming out in education, they are beating men. You go to the university, you will be seeing more women, more girls than boys over there. Even in the school, you could see that. So to that extent, but still, if you see in a family structure, family as an institution, it is still not changing much. Still, it's a very male-dominating society where the decision is in the men's control. Women have a very little in the decision-making. Still, there are women those are highly educated and very outgoing, doing their jobs, earning money. Still, they can't get married when they want to. The marriages are still arranged. You can't come out of the bad marriages. And you can't even make any decision about your life. Where would you like to go and study? Where would you like to go and work? So we women, it's changing. There is you could see it's changing, but it's very gradual in Pakistan. So I think the family structures are the one which needs to be changed. People, those who are educating, those who have suffered themselves, those women as a mothers or fathers. So they have to bring that change. And then obviously at the policy level too. Pakistan has also ratified so many international covenants and about women's rights. There are voices, there are human rights activists, there are some movement voices for that.
But violence against women is increasing.
But that's
Because as the consciousness level is going up, awareness is going up, women are now defying or resisting. So the men are not prepared to accept that resistance. So as a result of that, there is a violence, more violence. But I think this is a temporary phenomenon. But in exams, women are shining, and I think very soon these highly educated women may not find any good partner because men are not serious about education. So intellectually, women are going ahead of men in Pakistan. Most like 60% students in universities are women.
If you, how do you make a good capitalist? Raise them in a communist society.
Yeah.
How do you make more competitive women? Repress them. And they become more competitive. You know, thank goodness a woman has to be twice as smart and twice as hardworking as a man, but that's not so hard. You got my humor, I hope. Women will always outperform men. Men are they take their education for granted. They go out and play football and cricket and don't study hard. Women have been denied that education. I've seen this all the time. When they're using their sisters are using their brother's books, and then when they get the opportunity, they're always outscoring them in exams.
But still, it's a very difficult society for women to live, even as a working woman where I work. I mean, I've been working for the last so many years. I find it difficult. If working in a development sector, in NGO sector, still very difficult. They don't accept you as a boss if you are leading them. They will never accept you when it was a clerical, it's a clerk. He would never accept you as a boss. He would feel that he is much superior to me. If somebody has a women boss, it's really very unacceptable for men in the offices, even if they're working for women rights. Honestly speaking, and I have experienced myself because it's inside.
It's very interesting. There was a very interesting study. Most women said, if we perform well in exams, we would have the opportunity to go out of home. Now for men, this push is not there. So even if her brother is not performing well, there are no restrictions on his mobility. But for most women, if they wanted to be out of home, they must perform well in exams so that they can go up and up and up. So education is basically a road to freedom. So it's just, yeah.
And Bari always give a very interesting example in the field when we work with men, and he used to say, they complain about the oppression, how feudals or these industries are oppressing them and this and that. And then when Bari said, you have been oppressed by all these industrialists, feudals and all that, do you think are you oppressing someone? Because when you go back home and you play with women, so you are playing the same role. So it really helps them to understand that the oppression, there's a level of oppression as well, so they are no more different than they are in their homes. The oppressed women.
Wow.
I don't know how many democracy workshops we've done together in Pakistan and in other countries as well. And people always agree to it, except when I raise, how about in the home? And then they start to sort of look down and cough and say, that's a tremendous obstacle. Not just in Pakistan, in lots of places. I own my children and wife. Is what I say. Please, I'm not talking about myself. That's an attitude that's still very prevalent in many parts of the world. You have one question?
Well, I was just wondering, when that happens, when you meet this opposition from men that are supposed to be working under you or for you, what is it that you do, if anything?
Oh yeah, that's hard. It's very difficult always, and the best thing is that because most of the time the boss on you is mostly men, so it's difficult to go and complain because these are more about attitudes. So rather there are no solid examples and proofs to tell what happened. So people just look down on you by attitudes, underestimate you, try to find other weakness of you. Everybody has weakness. So they keep on criticizing you, and they usually most of the time they say, oh, you can't do this because you have to go, somebody has to go to field and spend time, it will be long hours, you won't be able to do this and that, and there are other certain attitudes. So mostly it's always, you have to struggle to prove yourself, you have to work more and more hard, so you can prove, oh yes, you are equal to them, you can also do what they think only they can do. Well, that's how you could do. Or other thing is that you all the women staff working together could sit together and form your own unions within them and try to pressurize someone. But it's really hard.
And for all of us that work, every workplace has its own culture. It develops its own culture, and you can see it at work. Sometimes it's really apparent. This is an oppressive place. Not this place. I'm not talking about this. Look how people are treating each other. How come some, even with your universities, I know some of our universities and some of the professors, and some of them come from very oppressive environments, and they act it. And some of them come from very confident environments, and that's great as well. Very interesting. And by the way, I think there's a leader of the organization as well, and the leadership sets an example. Who they hire. Not to talk bodies or organization. I think you have a Christian working for you. Is that correct?
I have Christians, yes.
Yeah, you have Christians.
Yeah, I have atheists.
You have atheists.
Yes.
Don't talk about yourself too much.
No, I said I have atheists working with me.
That's right.
And
And women and lots of different
Hindus.
and Hindus and people who are considered un-Islamic.
Yeah.
So that's.
But it's very interesting. This is
I mean, Islamic sects that are.
yeah, MDs.
To be,
I few years back I appointed 2 women as head of our operations unit, and there was a lot of resistance.
I was there.
Yeah, you were there.
I was
You know
there.
it.
You said to hear what people were saying.
Yeah, and it was so difficult because these people who were very senior, they were not willing to accept them because as a leader, they would not say because they are women, because they would always try to find problems, weaknesses. So it was really, it took us 2 years to make them realize that this has to happen. And no, these are women, they can't go to field. We have to give them a vehicle all the time. We can go on even motorbike. So it's a costly as well to have women as head of the operations unit. So there were always very solid reasons, but you have to resist.
And there's always a very unconscious kind of segregation, like if you're in an office or having a meeting or you're having a lunch together, the men will sit on one side, the women will sit on one side, if there's any women who goes and sits with them, which seems to be very unacceptable to most of the staff, male staff. There are kind of attitude you could see that there's gender equality still is on its way. So if you go to Pakistan, you will see that men are sitting separately, women, and it's unconscious thing that they will never go and sit where the men are sitting. So you could see the divide here.
But this is not Islamic,
That's right.
because there's a lot of misconception. Because you might have heard about Hajj, when Muslims go for pilgrimage to Mecca. There is no segregation. Men and women are together. During Muhammad's period time, women and men would pray together. There was no segregation. When in fact feudalism taken over, then feudals gradually started segregating men and women, and it became a norm in Muslim societies. We can easily break it by using such examples. Muslims have become in some way more conservative than the Islam. So like inheritance law, Islamic law is much more progressive than what is being practiced by Muslims. Similarly, women has a right to divorce. But the Islamists in Pakistan would say no, because they are not bothered about this. They think that we have to protect our culture. So they immediately switch from Islam to culture. So keep on interchanging Islam with culture and culture with Islam. So it's a politics as well.
I just want to ask one thing from this building. So when you think about gender inequality in developing countries, so what comes into your mind? What do you suggest could be done at the grassroots level? Because you have come from most very developing countries where you have. So what do you suggest for us? What do you think should be done at the grassroots level?
I don't know if it's practical, but what you were saying earlier made me think of an incident in my country's history. Before.
Which country are you?
Yeah, Iceland.
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 Yes, there was an incident when women decided that for one day they would, at a certain time, they would stop working. Every woman in the country would stop working, and it was months and months of planning. It was decided a year ahead of time, and it was all equal. Like they got all the right permits and everything, and all the women stopped working, and the city just shut down. Everything they were proving that not only were they equal, but they were necessary. And it was a very, very poignant and important event.
You can start this.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
you
very
can call it
interesting.
the Iceland experiment.
We on 8th of March we celebrate International Women's Day. All work is done by men. These they cook, they arrange everything. Men serve women for whole day and night. But we have never done that, so we should follow Iceland.
See, I know we're gonna run out of time, but I might have said this in this class, but, we have, women assistants downstairs, and men assistants as well. There's a culture of, women tea servers in Japan, and there's a anthropology article called The Revolt of the Tea Servers. And, I have guests, I have 2 guests today. So I went down to one of the women, not today, but a couple of years ago, and I said to her, I have guests, I have to have tea, either I can make the tea, or you can make the tea. If I make the tea, you have to go up and sit with my guests. She said, you make the tea, I'll sit with your guests. And I said, fine, I'll make the tea.
Yeah,
I can make tea. I'm sorry I made such terrible tea, but I can make something that approaches tea. And so right away, I'm not promoting myself here. I'm just saying, instead of just saying, I have guests make the tea, and the Japanese tea server she's not a tea server, office assistant, would never say no. She'd never say no to me for a variety of reasons. So that changes the culture. And by the way, now downstairs in the office, not because of me, please. It has nothing to do with me. They have a tea time, and the men make tea sometimes as well. They rotate. It's nothing to do with me. No, I don't know if it does. I'm not taking credit for it. But yeah, they changed the culture. And why don't they? Because you have tea twice a day. I don't know in the offices in Pakistan, well, you maybe have tea all day. But yeah, suddenly you change tea time. You serve you tea. A man will serve you. So those things can be done, right? You change the cultures, yes.
But if you have seen, anybody watched Gandhi film?
You mean the old Hollywood Gandhi film?
Yeah?
Yes, yes.
Gandhi, Gandhi adopted this strategy with the British, and he says he learned from his wife. Gandhi, being very conservative in his early age, he put restrictions on his wife that she would not leave home without his permission. One afternoon he came back and his wife was not at home. He says that I got furious. So my wife came back and my mother was also with her. So his wife defied his orders by using his mother, because he took his mother as well along with her, and he could not say anything. And he writes in his books that he started thinking that this is the best way to defy British rule in India. He never directly challenged British rule, but he continued defying whatever they would do.
And have them make the false.
And every Pakistani woman does that.
I think every woman does that. Okay, they create space.
Yeah, because we don't give them space.
Space, so they
Yeah,
need
right.
to create
Yeah,
space.
Well, this is, I'm sorry.
Well, that's any other suggestion, quick suggestion about a very good example.
We should invite him. What's his name? From Iceland?
Gisli. Gisli is my name.
Gisli.
We should invite you next time to Pakistan to observe the non-cooperation.
No,
Female non-cooperation day.
No, well,
no,
well,
it's
they
called,
said-
no, I would call it the Essential Women's Day.
Yes.
There was a.
Everyone deserves a
preparation
day
for
of
one
rest,
day.
right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's, go on.
I took a course on development in Eastern Africa. I remember a professor once told me the story of how he was in a village in Tanzania. We were speaking about feminism and alternative models of feminism. And he said a story about how he was speaking to a polygamous family where there's I think 3 or 4 wives and then there's a husband. And he said how these wives were complaining about how Western. And my question is the universality of feminism, whether or not it's Western in origin or whether or not it's universal. And he said how one of these wives said, Western feminists always look to me and they say I'm oppressed and I'm subjugated. But they disagreed with that and they said we view our role not so much in terms of equality as in I have rights based, but they view their role and whether or not they lived a good life and in terms of compatibility. They serve certain functions within the family, and the other wives serve other functions, and the husband serve other functions. And it didn't mean that the husband was necessarily a higher position, not when they were oppressed, but rather just how the family molded together. So my question to you then is, do you believe, because I know Islamic feminism in the previous class was kind of mentioned, do you believe that there is this universal concept of feminism, or do you think there's cultural, cultural feminism? There's Western feminism that is unique from feminism in Southeast Asia or the Islamic world.
I don't know much, but what I think about the Pakistan perspective, Islamic perspective, I think that there's a universal feminism, based on rights, like women rights, and the women from the West is more exposed to that feminism, right-based feminism, so she's aware of that. So whenever she will complain about something, so that complaint will be basing on those rights. Whereas cultural feminism, it is there, and you said about compatibility, which is fine. It's even in the West, when women have children, they could take a year off, and man is working, whereas the women are raising children for a time being 2 or 3 years, and they're school going, they go back to the work. But here the issue is more it's one roles divided to perform different duties. But those in Pakistan or in a developing country, Islamic countries, women have very little say in the decision making. Either she is deciding for herself, while she wanted to be at home to do this or that. She could be educated, she doesn't want to stay at home, she wants to go out and work, and then by the money she could have some maid who could do other course. So I think that's the issue is that then you have no say in the decision making. You're not empowered. You could do those roles could be divided among the family to do this and that. But it should be from their choice. So there it should not be imposed on them. Bari could add something else too.
No, I personally think that there should be equality. If we talk about equality, then and we believe that men and women are equal, then it's very essential that women should have the equal right to decide if she wants to have 3 husbands. So I think this whole notion is based on division of labor, and we need to, I think, go back to history as well, because men wanted to subjugate women and then started putting restrictions because he wanted to transfer his wealth and assets to his next generation. And that's why male population started putting restrictions on women's mobility, because in order to ensure that the children who are going to born are his children. And then having more than one wives, but never gave this right to women. So I think it's not a Western concept. We have a word in Pakistan, in our language, which is called saukan. This is a word. If you bring another wife, the first wife would declare her saukan, and saukan means enemy. So this is a very old concept, and this means that saukan is somebody who is going to capture some of your space. So in my view, we need to dig out our own roots. And of course, ordinary families, men would not have more than one wife. It was only the rich who could afford. And for a number of years, rather for 700 years, all Muslim kings stopped marrying for 700 years. No Muslim king was a legitimate child. They were all bastards. Because all our khalifas, we call them khalifas, all khalifas were not out of any wedlock. So it was only in the 17th century that they started marrying again. But they could have a harem. They could have 1,000 women, because it became difficult, because after you can't marry more than 5 women, but you can have 1,000 women in your harem, because the mullahs became very powerful at some stage, and they said you can't have more than 4. He wanted to have 4 women and also these concubines. So they decided, let's have no wife. But no mullah ever objected to such living. And now if I live with some women in Pakistan without having a proper marriage, I can be sentenced to death.
The crime is fornication.
Yeah. So for 700 years, they never opened their mouth. So how do you interpret this as far as the Islamic feminism or cultural feminism different from Western feminism? Of course, Western feminism evolved from a movement, from a suffrage movement. We adopted these concepts from the West without having any movement. So the concepts came, and then we are trying to build a movement. So it's a completely different process. And that's why movement is not spreading, because there is no grassroots movement, women's movement in Pakistan. There are women activists, and they are very known, and they're doing very good work. But there is no grassroots movement, because they don't bother to go to ordinary women. So when we talk about grassroots, there's a male grassroots and a female grassroots.
It's very difficult just to raise, 5 seconds, and then one more question. Yeah, it's very difficult to be, for Islamic feminism to take root if it's perceived as being anti-family.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult. Sorry, question.
Last class you said that anytime you like work with women's rights, you also have to like work with the men. So like what needs to be done with men, or like what do you do to work with men? Because like in order for women to gain power, men have to like give up some of theirs.
First of all, you have to build a trust with men. So why you are there, what kind of work you are going to do, and how it benefits them. Usually you have to show the benefits of that work to the men, how it benefits them, how it benefits the society. So it's usually this is how you have to convince them. So side by side you're working with women, so you're also working with men. But once you gain that trust, they always let their women go to the meetings, they let them travel with us. So the women, those who have never left their communities in 60 years' time, they now travel with us 700 kilometers for the rallies, for the protest sit-ins. So it's this kind of work you have to show them the benefit. Usually they think when people coming from NGOs, they have some kind of Western agendas, so they don't trust NGOs along with at grassroots level. When they think NGOs give Western people give them money, some communities think it's anti-Islam, this NGO concept and is working, and as a female worker you're not very be seen as a very respectable member. So first of all they challenge your own identity, or they usually think, oh, you look so nice, respectable, why are you working for NGO? I mean, I have this hundred of times, I have this question, facing this question. Can't you have some good job like teacher? Some respectable job like teacher, you could teach. Why, did your family member, your parents allow you to travel on your own with these men on a car? Like we have lace cars as well. Or do they give you permission? Don't they suspect with whom you are going, whom you are working? So these are kind of relationship you need to build with the community. So it's not anti-Western agenda. We are only working for your issues. So how come you're working with the labor for their minimum wage? How come it's a Western agenda? It's your minimum wage issue. This has nothing to do with the West. so like you say, if we are working about the disaster areas in Yemen, about the risk reduction, how can they make the communities much safer? So it has nothing to do with the West. It's about your community, about your village. So you have to convince them like that. So where comes West? West has to do something with your village or something with your minimum wage. So it's your agenda, in fact, we are here, it will benefit you. And we tell them you send your women to work in the fields, in the factories. So they are working there. So it's a part of, they are part of all this process. And then we have to tell them these women are your strength. It's a number, not strength in an emotional way, because you have to say initially they are strength. Because if there are 10 men coming, if they're bringing their families and women, we could be 20 or 30. We could be seen, we could pressurize the group. So we are numbers as well. So there are a number of ways you have to convince them. So it's not, even you're working for women, you're always working with men side by side. And then, when women start working with us, they really become empowered. I could see they really create a space for them for freedom, because they just sit in the meeting, they are a part of the decision we make for our work. So, and then now I've been working with women for the last 7 years, but not directly, we are not working as any funded project, but they used to call us, they are a state leader, they are going to be a part of local government election, they will be contesting the elections, their husbands have given them the permission, and then some of the men, those who were not willing initially to send their women for the meeting, they went to, while there was a local government election, they submitted their paper, they were with them, they ran their women's campaigns as well. Because they could see the benefits coming to them. The benefit is the thing. Because until unless we could you wouldn't liberate half of the population of a country, how could you develop? Even same is at home, same is at in the village level. If you're not liberating those half of your strength and number, you won't be able to get any benefit. I mean, half of your progress is at home, half of your asset is at home. So these kind of things you have to tell them.
Would you ever use the word, I know you have to go, but would you ever use the word that you would increase the honor of the family? Would you ever say that?
I just want to write one
Yes,
word.
Oh, okay.
There.
Well, no, not yet. We still believe that women as the honor of the family.
Yes,
Well, no, they still think men are the
honor of the family, okay.
They are-
But that women working would increase the honor of the men?
No,
No.
I don't think so.
That would never happen.
Never.
Can you read?
3 years?
100 years?
This means
Burden.
when daughter was in Pakistan, the father would say,
Women is a burden.
daughter is a burden.
And they cried a lot. Still.
We did this upside down. We said, we wanted to reduce your burden by empowering women.
See, yeah, that's how I was asking how you would wrap
Yeah.
this culturally.
Because this is cultural.
That's right.
So we, in 93, we started building houses for poor families. And we said half ownership would go to women. And then said, why? We said, well, because women have the right. And this is, they should own half of the new house. And they said, well, house belongs to women. I said, okay, then we wanted to give you half. Because they were playing trick. But since they were poor, it was easy. So most people are poor in Pakistan. So it's easier to work with poor, grassroots level. So we built these houses, and the deed agreement had that 2 clauses. If you would hit your wife, your half right would be snatched under the law. And if you don't send your daughter to school,
Yeah.
these were the 2 conditions. If you accept it, you get the house.
Wow. Nice.
And it is well documented in many books. We did it. Of course, in the beginning, the violence increased in the community. We were expecting. When violence increased, of course, we would call community meeting, and we would say, look, you had signed this agreement. You want to lose it, or you want to say sorry to your wife in the public. So after 2 cases, it was settled down. Because women need some outside support in order to balance. We did not want to create trouble, but we wanted to bring women a little up and to give confidence and support. So it helped a lot. And after 2010 floods, most NGOs followed this model, even government, because this was a successful model. There is a joke. A man got asked his maidservant to marry him. She says, I'm not stupid. If I marry with you, I won't get any salary.
Not bad. I want to thank, I thought we went over. I'll see you people on the